Ah, electricity. Lightning in a bottle. The devil's juice. Thor piss. Nah, I had it with the devil's juice. I almost never think about it when it's working, but when my electricity goes out for even a minute, it is a Hindenburg-level tragedy. Now, 15 years ago, a lot of the power to make this electricity would have come from coal. Dirty, polluting, frankly rude coal. And that would have made me sick. But nowadays, I don't have to be sick, or even feel bad about it at all, because there's a new #1 electricity producer in America. I'm talking about natural gas. And even better, everybody loves it. Not just those brave patriots who refuse to cook on anything else.
They decided gas-powered stoves, racist, and have to go.
And I have actually taped myself to my stove. I've been here for 24 hours now.
GOP thrusts gas stoves, Biden's green agenda into the culture wars. Oh, not the culture wars. Probably true.
See, conservatives love how natural gas comes from our own domestic sources. And hello bipartisanship, all those godless commie liberals are also on Team Natural Gas because it led to this incredible decrease in our carbon dioxide emissions. And if you're just looking at this graph, you might be tempted to think switching from coal to natural gas was great for the climate. But unfortunately, the House of Natural Gas was built on the foundation of ignoring one critical aspect. Gas has a tendency to leak. And you might find yourself asking, so what? You know, so some of the gas doesn't make it to the power plant, who cares? But the thing about natural gas is that it's mostly made up of methane. That's the part that explodes so nice. And we probably shouldn't even call it natural gas, because the word natural implies that it's maybe good or clean burning or something, when really it's almost entirely methane, which is a greenhouse gas, meaning when it gets in the atmosphere, it absorbs the heat that was escaping into space and sends it right back down to warm up the planet, just like CO2. Except it's actually not just like CO2, because methane can trap 80 times more heat than carbon dioxide in a 20-year period. It's like when LeBron James was playing high school basketball. He's 6'8", and they are 95 pounds soaking wet. So yeah, when you're just comparing coal and natural gas, aka methane, at the power plant, gas generates a little less than half the CO2 that coal does. But when you take into account the many methane leaks at the wellheads and the processing plants and the compressor stations and the 3 million miles of pipelines, natural gas's climate impacts in the US are right back in coal territory, baby. And we don't even know the full extent of the damage gas has caused because leaks are really hard to detect. And the primary method the US government used to account for leaks was to ask the oil and gas companies how much methane they were leaking and then take their word for it. Awesome. And every year we're getting more invested in natural gas. It's now 40% of our power generation in the US, making it the #1 source of our electricity. And we also pipe gas to factories and houses and office buildings and a ton of other places for them to burn themselves. And despite burning about 88 billion cubic feet of natural gas every single day, we are producing so much of it that we're also super cooling it down into liquefied natural gas, loading it up on ships, and then sending it away to other countries all across the world. A process, I will note, that requires a ton of extra energy and emits even more methane, making it worse for the climate than coal in a lot of scenarios. And it's not just like a little bit of LNG. In 8 years, we went from basically not exporting it at all to being the world's #1 LNG exporter. And I know America loves exporting our culture, but normally it's pretty innocuous, like trying to get French people to try our blonde guy's nachos. But in this case, exporting our obsession with natural gas has the potential to lock the entire globe into using yet another dangerous, polluting fossil fuel for decades to come. But maybe there's something we can do about it, maybe? And for once, there's actually some good news about natural gas at the end of this video. So you'll just have to wait 40 minutes. How is this video 40 minutes? I have to edit these. What am I doing? Well, let's get to it. Hi, I'm Rollie Williams, a guy with a climate science and policy degree and about 2 more good years left in me. And this is a video about the natural gas industry scamming America. Welcome to Climate Town. The year was 2009, and a fresh-faced Barack Hussein Obama had just won the presidential election by refusing to show the future president his birth certificate. Bazinga! But as soon as Obama got the keys to the White House car, he found himself driving directly into the oncoming traffic of a recession, a ton of unemployment, and a climate change-inducing amount of coal power. Now, Obama didn't love coal power, but American presidents have typically had one priority that's over everything else: energy security.
We're here to talk about America's energy security, an issue that's been a priority for my administration since the day I took office. Energy security of our energy.
In 2009, coal was king, and everyone from the coal companies themselves to the Energy Information Administration were going long on that Kentucky rock steak. Environmentalists, climate advocates, and a whole bunch of other people hated it, but coal was cheap, plentiful, and it ran the f***ing country for the past century. Don't you go near my coal! But then coal had one of those moments where it coughed, and its friends were like, "Coal, are you okay?" And there were minor chords playing, and it said, "Yeah, I'm good." But coal was not good. Because a new technology had loaded up its sleigh with jobs and energy security and climate action for all the boys and girls. That's right. I'm talking about fracking. And also directional drilling. Now, come on, you've heard of fracking. It sounds like the kind of thing a sci-fi character would say as a swear word, but it was actually one of the most important developments in all of American history. Seriously, right up there with the moon landing or the invention of the high five. Now, historically, American oil and gas production has been a real roller coaster. There was a time when you could be out burying your dog and enough oil and gas would pop out of the ground for you to buy 1,000 dogs. But by the early 2000s, conventional oil production in the US was way down, and natural gas was hanging on by a thread. And since America still loved fossil fuels, that meant we were gonna have to get them from foreign governments.
In Geneva yesterday, OPEC slapped another large increase on crude oil prices. Gasoline shortages are spreading across the country.
Say it, a lot of gas!
No, man,
8 o'clock. We were supposed to pump at 8 o'clock. It's 8:45. What are you doing in line?
And we draw the line at other countries trying to push us around. Pushing other countries around is our thing. We own it, we invented it, you can't have it. You know what you can have? Blam, one of those. How about a second one? And I bet you never seen one of these before. Okay, fracking is short for hydraulic fracturing, which means using water and other fluids to literally fracture the out of that rock, freeing the trapped hydrocarbons and sucking them into the fluid. Now, fracking itself was not a new technology, but because they could only drill in fairly straight lines, you could only SEAL Team 6 smaller sections of the rock before you got through the shale layer that held most of the oil and gas. Fracking and horizontal drilling came together in the 2000s to unlock a ton of oil and gas that was previously thought to be too expensive to extract. And while fracking doesn't sound like the kind of thing environmentalists would think is very cool, and it would almost certainly make enemies out of a bunch of people who could suddenly light their drinking water on fire, fracked natural gas had a climate angle that gas companies were very good at using. It would be a bridge fuel.
Bridge fuel.
Bridge fuel.
Bridge fuel
is nothing more than a bridge.
Guys, we know natural gas is a fossil fuel and it's extractive and it's not great for the environment. And we hate that about it. We really do. We hate that. But all that fracked gas could replace that stinky old coal while you guys are getting renewables to work or whatever. We love solar. We love all that renewable crap. Let's go windmills, am I right? So how about partnering with Big Daddy Natural Gas? And then when you guys get your little windmills to work, we'll totally leave. We promise.
I must have missed 60 minutes. What are you saying?
So natural gas fever blew through American politicians like a tornado in an IKEA. Environmental groups aren't so easily fooled, but since America's coal addiction seemed like our biggest problem, progressives were willing to temporarily embrace natural gas as a bridge fuel to replace coal, and an unholy alliance was formed between natural gas and environmental advocates like the Waterkeeper Alliance, the American Lung Association, and the Sierra Club.
The concept that we were trying to convey was to say, eventually we have to be off all fossil fuels, but we have to get off coal first, oil second, and gas third.
And Obama was making speeches like this.
It's the bridge fuel that can power our economy with less of the carbon pollution that causes climate change. We, it turns out, are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. It could support more than 600,000 jobs by the end of the decade in a cleaner and cheaper way.
And having a nearly limitless supply of fracked natural gas right beneath our feet, it seemed too good to be true. It was too good to be true. Obviously it was.
You're very perceptive.
I watched 60 Minutes.
So if you remember the intro, yes, methane gas really does emit less CO2 than coal for electricity generation. But that doesn't take into account a fun little thing called fugitive emissions. See, when coal falls out of a coal car, it just becomes an adorable little rock. But when methane leaks out of a pipe, it becomes an invisible gas with a seemingly insatiable desire to grab onto heat and return it to the planet. And that wouldn't really be a problem if methane didn't leak every goddamn all the time. Here's a former Exxon engineer from a truly wonderful Frontline doc series about oil and gas.
When they were marketing natural gas as clean energy, they didn't really know what they were talking about because they were fixated on the idea that natural gas, when burned, produces half the carbon dioxide emissions of coal. The industry was not monitoring methane leakage, so they did not have data about how much was leaking. And there wasn't much appetite for management to measure methane leakage because if they found out there was a problem, they would have to do something about it.
The increase in global temperature from methane is staggering. Scientists estimate that methane is responsible for 20 to 30% of the modern climate warming, despite there being 200 times less methane than CO2 in the atmosphere. Terrifying. And more on that feeling after this. Whoa, what is this, a ad? No, not a ad. Well, yes, a ad, but not a ad for like Patriot powder for your underground bunker. This is an ad for the Climate Town Patreon page. Yes, here at Climate Town, we spend weeks researching topics, calling experts, and watching hours of footage from the 1980s before we even write a single word of a script.
Cooking with gas, cooking with gas.
And the only reason we can take that kind of time is because of our supporters on Patreon. And starting right now, I'm sweetening the deal with a whole bunch of extra Patreon perks that are actually a little bit good. Yeah, I'm talking a Patreon-only Discord channel, even more behind-the-scenes exclusives, bloopers, live Q&A sessions with the Climate Town team after episode releases, and more. Maybe you're thinking, I like the videos, but how do I know they'll use my money responsibly? Let me tell you, here at Climate Town, we're frugal as shit. See these whiteboards? Free on Craigslist, just cause the edges were a little f***ed up. See this couch? It's uncomfortable, and I hate the way it looks, but I love the way my sister's coworker sold it to me for $40. See all these bags of coffee? They were expired, so we got them for free. This is hundreds of dollars worth of coffee. This is a drug bust worth of coffee. What I'm trying to say is that here at Climate Town, we use money responsibly, and that is an official Climate Town promise. Okay, well I can explain that obviously. We got it for free on credit card points on account of how f***ed up my face looks. So if you like what we're doing and you want to support us, you might want to check out our Patreon page. And if you're already on there, you don't have to do anything extra, but I encourage you to check out the new tiers and offerings. And just to wet your collective whistles, you dry little whistlers, we're doing an incentive thing here. If we get to 5,000 patrons, we're currently at like 3,700, if we get to 5,000 by June 1st, I will install a telephone right here, and I'll answer that phone. I will answer anyone who calls it. And it's gonna be like an old school phone, like the kind Al Pacino has in the movie Heat.
Okay.
We'll give you the number. You call it, and then it rings the phone, which I will then diligently answer at the very least for the full first day. If it starts to affect my ability to edit and get these videos done, maybe we'll move to like a monthly call-in thing. I'm not sure. The Climate Town Patreon. We'll use that money real good. Wow, what a ad. Anyway, methane can get into the atmosphere from a bunch of different sources. Landfills, animal agriculture, even wildfires release methane. But the oil and gas industry is responsible for more than a quarter of all the methane that Americans put into the atmosphere. And that's just wasted methane. It's not heating any houses. It's not making any electricity. It's just needlessly escaping the oil and gas system where it will do nothing but contribute to global warming for years to come. And remember, that's just the methane the oil and gas industry has reported missing. There's a whole bunch more leaked methane that goes unreported, and we have no idea how much it is because it's really hard to track. First of all, natural gas is odorless and colorless, which means if it's leaking, but you're not looking at it, you're probably not gonna notice anything. That special stink smell is added before they sell gas to consumers, so you can tell when your gas is leaking, because one time in the 1930s, an entire school exploded, and they figured stinking it up a bit might help keep casualties down. When it's leaking out of a wellhead or a processing plant, and you're not actively looking at it through an $80,000 methane vision camera, you're probably not gonna see or smell anything. And speaking of not actively looking for it, the EPA's traditional method of monitoring for gas leaks really was to ask the oil and gas companies. That's it. The millions of miles of gas pipelines and infrastructure were to be self-monitored and self-reported. And since there are fines for releasing methane, they could either tell on themselves and pay the fine, or let the invisible plume of gas that no one knows about just blow away and keep their money. And god damn, I have heard of some huge conflicts of interest, but this one has got to be top 10.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me.
Now you might be thinking, this sounds a lot like conjecture. Do you have some kind of specific example you can use right here to stick the landing on this bit? Yes. In August of 2023, a valve at a Phillips 66 facility in Texas failed and leaked 9.5 million cubic feet of natural gas directly into the atmosphere. And since I had no fucking clue how much 9.5 million cubic feet meant, that's 300,000 pounds of a gas poured directly into the sky, and no one reported it. But then, several months later, a nonprofit called Carbon Mapper was looking at some satellite data that just happened to be recording over Texas at that time and discovered the enormous unreported methane leak over the Phillips 66 facility. Bloomberg Green asked Phillips 66 for comment in November, and wouldn't you know it, but 6 days later, Phillips 66 reported the methane leak to Texas state regulators. And this is just my own personal speculation, but it really seems like if that satellite hadn't been watching that exact area and Carbon Mapper hadn't been crunching the numbers, that methane leak would have gone unreported. And I will go on to speculate that this is not the first time fossil fuel companies have covered up their methane leaks. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is a fucking ton of methane leaking out of the oil and gas industry. One study estimates that just US natural gas pipelines by themselves leak between 1.2 and 2.6 million tons of methane every year. This has the climate impact of adding between 25 million and 50 million additional cars to the roads in just wasted fugitive emissions. So if you're the kind of person who wants to do a cost-benefit analysis here, you'll find you can afford to lose about 3 to 5% of the methane through leaking before natural gas is worse for the climate than the coal it was supposed to be replacing. The US government used to think we were leaking about 1.4%, which is already not great. But after some more in-depth studies, the White House acknowledges it's more like 2.3% or higher. And it seems like the more we look at fugitive methane emissions, the more we realize we've been underestimating them for decades. By a lot. And that's not to say that coal is secretly good. It's not. It's bad. They're both bad options. It's like we spent billions of dollars to replace a heroin addiction with an opioid epidemic, which, to America's credit, is extremely on brand. And I know I've been talking about gas leaks and methane emissions for a while, and this is all stuff that's apparent to us now, but it's important to look at this in context. Back in the 2010s, when we were going hog wild on natural gas, it was much less obvious how the next 10 to 20 years might go. They were scared shitless that coal use would continue to pump CO2 into the atmosphere, and they were just so ding-dang excited that this new American natural gas could burn cleaner. And it wasn't just the vibes, natural gas had those 3 letters that you always want on your side. I'm talking, of course, about MIT. That's right, in 2011, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Energy Initiative released a massive study called The Future of Natural Gas. It was written by about 20 MIT dorks with the support of a stacked advisory committee. And you don't have to read all 308 pages to get to their very official take. It's right there in the foreword and acknowledgements. The US has a ton of gas, and it could be a bridge fuel to a low carbon future. In short, let's frack. Well, I guess that's that. Case closed. I mean, it's MIT after all. Yeah, you know what? Let's just take a quick look at the sponsors, just in case something comes up. First and foremost, we thank the American Clean Skies Foundation. Discussions with the foundation led to the conclusion that an integrative study on the future of natural gas in a carbon-constrained world could contribute to the energy debate in an important way, and the foundation stepped forward as the major sponsor. Awesome! The American Clean Skies Foundation? Yes! God damn, when I wake up in the morning and I look out the window and the sky is clean, I am sure there's nothing to look into here. But seeing as how I'm already here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for the opportunity to discuss the great promise of natural gas in the United States. I'm Aubrey McClendon, CEO of Chesapeake Energy, and also Chairman of the American Clean Skies Foundation.
Curious. A fracking company. A big fracking guy. It's fracking money. Huh. Yeah, that's right. The American Clean Skies Foundation was formed and funded by the CEO of Chesapeake Energy, one of the premier fracking companies in America. So it might not come as a huge shock that the abstract of the paper praises the abundance, low cost, and CO2 emission reduction capabilities of natural gas, while noting that the environmental impacts are challenging but manageable. We have to roll all the way down to page 171 after the end of the main report to Appendix 1A to find a more in-depth discussion of fugitive emissions. And even in that appendix, it mostly adds up to, we don't know enough to talk about it, and if the leaks are bad, I'm sure they'll get better in the future. But maybe one of the authors of the paper, Ernest Moniz, would care to comment. Roll it, Frontline.
Moniz would not talk about it in our interview, other than to say it was transparent.
The point is, we always believe in transparency, and so that's, yeah.
So yeah, the 2010s turned out to be a sort of jambalaya of people willing to downplay the problems with natural gas for various reasons. And by 2012, natural gas had the full support of the Tostitos Presents the President of the United States.
The development of natural gas will create jobs and power trucks and factories that are cleaner and cheaper, proving that we don't have to choose between our environment and our economy. And by the way, it was public research dollars over the course of 30 years that helped develop the technologies to extract all this natural gas out of shale rock, reminding us that government support is critical in helping businesses get new energy ideas off the ground.
And after that, whoo, it was on. Hot diggity dog, America! There's a new kid in town, and his name is Johnny Natural Gas. That's right, gas production is booming like a flamethrower at a popcorn convention. Obama says jump, natural gas says, you got it, Daddy-O! And who's that at the door? Why, it's the new Secretary of Energy, Ernest Moniz! And no, not a different Ernest Moniz, the same Ernest Moniz as before, the guy who wrote the MIT paper about the glories of natural gas. Blast off more natural gas! And while we're at it, have a cigarette and relax about all those gas leaks, because in 2013, the EPA lowered their estimates for how much methane the oil and gas industry was leaking by 20%. Why did the EPA do that? Because the oil and gas industry pinky swore it was true. Did the EPA do their own testing to verify? No, they did not. And ring-a-ding-ding, what's this? For the first time in American history, natural gas beats out coal as the #1 power source in the US of A. What an upset! Seriously, and not to belabor this point, but in 2009, America's most informed energy agency, the EIA, predicted coal would be our #1 power source for decades to come, the foreseeable future. And then 6 years later, natural gas came through and made him look like a bunch of Charlie horses. So it's kind of an important point to remember. Then it seemed like Obama was starting to take methane a little more seriously with a clean power plan and some methane leak restrictions, but oh no, here comes Trump and boom, there go the clean power plan, boom, there go those methane leak restrictions, boom, Trump tries to bring back coal, but bang, natural gas cuts him off at the pass. My God, gas is king now. Can anybody beat natural gas? Nope, he couldn't do it. Natural gas continues to dominate modern American electricity generation. We're fracking a record high amount of gas. New pipelines were approved despite environmental opposition, but not so fast, Jackson. The Biden administration is making some major climate moves, including the biggest piece of climate legislation in U.S. history.
Lower energy costs for millions of families. I want to take the most aggressive action ever to confront the climate crisis.
But natural gas is still not going down. That's enough of that. I don't know what year it is for you, but for me it's 2024 and the natural gas industry is only expanding. Every calendar year they're spending billions on new gas infrastructure to accommodate the ever-increasing amount of fracked gas. Unfortunately, all that supply means American gas producers have to slow down their fracking operation. Come on, I'm just kidding! They're gonna get our friends addicted to natural gas too! That's right, I'm talking about the black tar heroin of methane, liquefied natural gas. Basically, fossil fuel companies are fracking and extracting natural gas here in America, loading it onto big special boats, and sending it to places like the EU, the UK, Japan, South Korea, and India. And if you're picking up on the pattern of this episode, yes, LNG is significantly more damaging to the climate than regular natural gas for a couple of obvious reasons. For one, the only way to make any money shipping natural gas around the world in a big boat is to cram it in there real tight. And that means turning that gas into a liquid. But the only way to do that is to Mr. Freeze it down until it gets so cold it doesn't want to be a gas anymore. Which doesn't happen until you get to negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit. Which means right off the bat, you have to waste about 8% of all the natural gas just to power the liquefaction process. And that's not even considering the export terminal's tendency to get a little leaky. And then there are the LNG tankers, which burn a ton of fuel to move that LNG all over the world. That fuel is either one of the most polluting fuel sources we have, known as heavy fuel oil or bunker fuel, or just the natural gas itself. Now the trips are thousands of miles long, which allow leak-prone LNG ships plenty of opportunity to seep methane out into the atmosphere as they're traveling to their destination. Whew! All that's left now is to turn that liquid gas back into a gas, which requires even more gas for power. Oh, and these are specialized, single-purpose, funky-ass gas tankers, which means they have to make the thousands of miles long return journey empty. Well, not quite empty. They have to keep some of that LNG on board so the tanker doesn't break down on the way back. And all of these LNG-related emissions happen before the gas gets used for its intended purpose, where it will release more emissions. A recent paper from 2023 found that the greenhouse gas emissions associated with LNG can be quite a bit higher than coal, depending on the type of fuel the ship uses and the length of the trip. And remember, the United States is not a side character in the LNG world. Before 2016, we exported exactly 0 LNG from the lower 48 states, but in the 8 years since, we became the #1 exporter on the planet. The absolute bonanza of LNG began with a tiny little press release from the EIA about Louisiana shipping its first cargo of domestically sourced natural gas out of the Sabine Pass export terminal. They had gotten all their permits, they had built their facility, and on February 24th, 2016, they waved goodbye to their little boat full of hopes and dreams and LNG bound for Brazil. Oh, and also there were 4 other massive LNG export terminals being bolted together at warp speed at the exact same time. Soon, all 5 were online, and another 3 have come online since, for a total of 8 operational export terminals, each one costing billions to tens of billions of dollars to construct and capable of exporting between 200 million and 4.55 billion cubic feet of gas per day. That's about 10% of the natural gas we produce in America going overseas every single day. And of course, on a local level, all that new LNG infrastructure produces some nasty air pollution and a ton of other issues for the people who happen to be living in the places that private companies wanted to set up their export terminals. And they're being built in high-income areas with predominantly white residents. Sorry, wait a minute. And being the world's #1 exporter of LNG might be enough for lesser countries, but here in the United States, it's not even close. Here's the LNG capacity we currently have, and here's the LNG capacity that's currently under construction. That's right, we are set to more than double the amount of LNG we can export to other countries. And remember, this is permanent infrastructure being built by companies who expect to get decades of use out of it. And if you think we're stopping here, you must be out of your goddamn mind. Because here's the LNG capacity the United States government has already issued permits for. We are world champions right now, but just you wait till we're at triple capacity. And since these projects regularly lock in long-term contracts for their natural gas, it's going to be pretty tough to decrease global gas demand 20% by 2030 and 75% by 2050. You know, the numbers the International Energy Agency has made it very clear we need to hit to get to net zero by 2050 in order to avoid catastrophic climate change. Catastrophic. What a word. Great word. A lot of good C's and T's in there. Catastrophic. Good A's too. Good A sound. And it is at this time that I ask you, in what way is a constant and massive expansion of entrenched natural gas infrastructure planned over decades treating it like a bridge fuel?
Bridge fuel. Bridge fuel.
We need an energy source that will serve as a bridge, like first gen's natural gas. Natural gas! Yay!
When I think of a bridge, I think of a path between point A and point B. What I'm seeing here is an amazing effort to turn point A into an unassailable fortress of natural gas that has no intention of winding itself down in favor of renewable energy. Increasing exports kind of seems like a way of further entrenching natural gas demand across the globe. And of course it does! In what world is the natural gas industry going to willingly put itself out of business? It's crazy. It's like making a deal with the devil and then being shocked to find yourself getting absolutely f***ed by the devil. It's the devil! That's his whole thing! It's the devil, Kramer! The devil! Now you remember that whole, here's our LNG capacity now, but here's the capacity we have under construction, and here's the capacity that's been permitted and ready to break ground? Well, there's a fourth one. It's the LNG capacity we'll have if all the proposed projects get permitted and built. And my friend, it is a real bear. This would represent an LNG capacity that is almost 5 times greater than our current world #1 capacity. But I'm using the subjunctive tense here because the Biden administration recently paused permitting for new LNG infrastructure to look at, drumroll please, the climate implications of LNG infrastructure. That's right, if you remember hearing a lot about LNG in the news recently, it might have been something like this.
It's the administration trying to say that storms are bad, so we're going to ban these exports.
Freezing the export of liquefied natural gas.
Or maybe it was more like this.
This is all designed in the end, the whole climate hysteria, to enable China to become the global dominant.
Now, these are fun, but not, what's that thing? Accurate. See, basically, there's an LNG export terminal in Louisiana called Calcasieu Pass. It currently exists, and it produced its first LNG in January of 2022. Now, they really wanted to expand with a second Calcasieu Pass terminal, or CP2, but a whole bunch of climate activists made a big ol' racket about it.
Within 10 years, American exported LNG will be producing more greenhouse gases than everything that happens on the continent of Europe.
And it actually worked. Not only did the Biden administration pause the permitting for CP2, but they stopped issuing any new LNG permits so they could assess things like the perilous impacts of methane on our planet. And this is not a minor change in the way we permit LNG. Before this, the Department of Energy had never denied an LNG permit for a project that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission had already signed off on. It's not every day that a presidential administration takes a meaningful swing at the oil and gas industry. In fact, it happens on almost no days, ever. It's like the Cubs win the World Series kind of rare. Natural gas has gotten an incredible amount of special treatment since it exploded onto the scene, and this decision could be signaling a change in the way we view methane. Now, I don't want to get out over my skis here. This decision only affects this portion of LNG in America, and there's still a fucking ton of climate work to be done. But this, my friends, is an official win in my book. And oh my God, we finally made it to the what we're gonna do about it phase of the video. Congratulations, people out there. First, absolutely foremost, we gotta avoid the coal versus natural gas trap. We can't compare the two worst options and then pick between those two options. We don't wanna do either of them. It's like asking if you wanna drink diet piss or piss zero. The answer is water, please. And in this case, that means renewables like solar, wind, hydro, probably some nuclear, and energy storage to balance the grid. Second, and this is a quick one, remember that natural gas is basically just methane. There's a ton of studies that show that when people hear natural gas, they think it's good, but when people hear methane, they think it's bad, despite the fact that it's basically the same fucking thing. So remember that. Third, judging by all the natural gas infrastructure we keep on building, methane gas is gonna be around for a while, and that means it's gonna keep leaking. So we need to continue to fight for tighter methane leak standards. How do we do that? Great question. Our friends over at Climate Change Makers have put together a playbook on ways you can get involved in methane leak advocacy. Check it out right now, link in the bio. And double bonus, it's about to get a lot easier to track leaks thanks to the incredible work of 2 climate groups who are sending full-on satellites up into the night sky to detect methane leaks from space. Big shout out to Carbon Mapper and the Environmental Defense Fund. With their new satellite data and all the other leak detection improvements, we might finally get a more complete picture of just how much methane is leaking into the atmosphere. And I just gotta imagine that real leak monitoring is gonna be a better system than calling up fossil fuel companies and asking them what's up. What's up? What's up? What's up? That was comedy 20 years ago. All right, if you take away anything from this episode, just remember to get more educated about the climate crisis. We got a bunch of resources in the description. We got some videos, we got articles, and books even. Books! They're still there. Remember books? Books. Computers for going to sleep. Wow, we did it. All of us did it. You and me, equal effort on all sides. We made it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to Climate Power and Canary Media for partnering with us on this episode. The world of methane gas is a dark and scary one, but their support, research, and reporting were incredibly helpful on making this video. And don't forget to check out our new and improved Patreon page. God damn, you really gotta check out all the new perks we're offering. And there are even more. Just go check it out, you curious little fox. And I'm not kidding about that phone thing. I'll install that son of a bitch right here if we get to 5,000 patrons by June 1st. That's a Scout's honor promise. The biggest promise a Scout can make. And yes, I was a Boy Scout. And guess what else we got? We got a newsletter, baby. That's right, me and writer-director Matt Nelsen write about all the stuff we couldn't cram into the less than 10 videos we make every year. It's a lot of fun, it's good climate info, it's the same writing team as the Climate Town episodes, and if you sign up, it'll show up right in your inbox. That's a guarantee. We've also got a podcast called The Climate Denier's Playbook, and I host it with my childhood friend and Daily Show writer, Nicole Conlan. Basically, we sit at a big table with our producer, Ben Boult, and we break down climate disinformation campaigns, and honestly, it's a lot of fun. We just started releasing episodes of our new season, so if you haven't listened before, you picked a great time to start, friend. And that's it. We did it. And just remember, there is a secret Easter egg hunt embedded throughout all these videos, and literally no one has found it yet. Am I joking? Who knows? I'm not. Okay.
Okay. I have not tried marijuana. I have never used it at any time.